We have lots to discuss in today's video, including the latest rumors around the league. We're still awaiting a finalization of a David Jiricek trade. We'll discuss the latest information on that situation, plus more trade talk around teams like Colorado, the New York Rangers, the Boston Bruins, Montreal Canadiens, and the New York Islanders. Plus, we had another trade today as well involving a prospect between Nashville and Chicago, some more injury updates, and news from the waiver wire, plus who is the most likely coach that's facing the most pressure and it's on the hot seat right now after we've already seen a few changes. We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Let's first start with a couple of quick updates. One from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday we saw the Penguins place forward Valtteri Puustinen on waivers. He in fact has cleared and has been reassigned to the American Hockey League affiliate. So he's been demoted, and Blake Lizotte has been activated from IR, so he will take his spot on the roster. Some other injury updates around the NHL as we get ready for a big game action tonight. Lots of teams ready to go here one day ahead of American Thanksgiving. The Vegas Golden Knights will have both William Karlsson and Alex Pietrangelo back in tonight's lineup, so that'll be a big boost for them. In Detroit, goaltender Alex Lyon tweaked something in the morning skate practice this morning, so he was supposed to back up. Talbot was going to be the starter all along. That will not change, but Ville Husso has been recalled in order to be the backup for the Red Wings tonight. And in Toronto was hopeful, somewhat optimistic that Austin Matthews would make his return tonight as they do battle with the defending Cup champion Florida Panthers. That is not going to happen. Austin Matthews is still not ready to play. Speaking to the media today, it doesn't really sound like it's related to the injury or the recovery or anything of that nature. This is more about Matthews kind of getting his legs and timing and everything back in order after being away for a few weeks. He's only really had one full practice with the club. So this is kind of about, all the things that you miss when you're not practicing and you're away from the team. Obviously, conditioning and, timing and reps and, all that kind of stuff that goes with being, game ready. So Matthews will miss one more game, and then hopefully, if all goes well, he can get a couple more practices in this week and be ready to go for one of their upcoming games, probably by the weekend, would be my suspicion. Like I said, we did get a trade today as well. Nothing substantial, so I didn't do a dedicated video on it, but there was a trade between Chicago and Nashville. Ryder Rolston has been traded from the Chicago Blackhawks over to the Nashville Predators. Rolston's only in his second pro season. Of course, Chicago obviously didn't feel like they had an opportunity for him there anymore. Time for a fresh start after a year and a bit in their AHL system. So he goes over to the Nashville Predators. Rolston's father is a former NHLer Brian Rolston, so obviously been around the game a long time. We'll see if anything turns out for him, but an opportunity for a fresh start in a new NHL franchise. We also got word today that former head coach in the NHL, Guy Boucher, who most recently worked in the NHL with the Toronto Maple Leafs as an assistant coach, has been named a head coach of a KHL club in Avant-Garde. So Guy Boucher returns to his head coaching role, but he's going to go all the way to the other side of the world to make that happen. But of course, Boucher's been in and out of the NHL numerous times over his tenure. He's been the head coach of the Lightning, as well as the Ottawa Senators, and he's worked with some other clubs as well. I said most recently with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll see how he makes out in Russia and if he has another go at it in the NHL again someday. A big update in junior hockey. The CHL has announced that Kelowna has been awarded the rights to host the 2026 Memorial Cup. So, of course, the Memorial Cup features the host team and the three champion league teams from across the WHL, OHL, and QMJHL as well. So, Kelowna will be hosting that in 2026. Now, as I mentioned, what coach is facing the most pressure amongst those that haven't already lost their jobs? Of course, we've seen two coaching changes here already with both Jim Montgomery losing his job with the Boston Bruins and then Drew Bannister out with St. Louis. Now, fortunately for Montgomery, he's the one who took Bannister's job with the Blues, so he wasn't out of work very long. And obviously, a coach that's got a lot of respect and a great track record and a lot of connections to that Blues organization. So, again, no big surprise. Like a lot of people said, Bannister probably wouldn't have been named head coach had Montgomery been available in the summertime. If the Bruins would have lost that first round series to the Leafs, the belief was he was going to be let go by the Bruins at that point, and if he had been made available, St. Louis would have snatched him up then. But that never came to be. David Pastrnak had the Game 7 overtime winner. They had a different fate, and of course Montgomery entered the season this year in the final year of his contract. Now it's believed, I believe Derek Lalonde in Detroit is in a similar situation. But of course Detroit, and we said before that, Steve Yzerman in the past has typically been a very patient man, and it's not a guy you see firing coaches very often. He had so long of a run there with Jeff Blashill. But I think it's also fair to say that the team was in a very different spot. It was earlier in the rebuild, and now we're at a point where, you're expecting more results. And Blashill is a guy as well, like in Detroit, like he was there a long run, right? So, Yzerman inherited him, whereas Lalonde has been his first coaching hire. And they're expecting more in Detroit right now than where they were. They were expecting to take a step forward this year, and it hasn't happened. Although, to be honest, my opinion, based on what Yzerman had to work with, the roster moves that have been made, I wasn't really sure that I was overly confident it was going to happen, especially their blue line. They have some good forwards, but, Patrick Kane was re-signed. I'm not saying that was a bad move, but it hasn't quite worked out for him to perform the way he did last year. He came in obviously a bit late to the season after recovering from that hip resurfacing injury, and he was phenomenal. He was playing at a point per game status. This year, he's about 50% of that production. So clearly, still a good player. I'm sure they don't have really regrets. It's not like it's big money tying up on the cap or anything, but, Kane hasn't been as productive. A lot of the other guys, if you take a look around, the only one that's really gotten better this year is Lucas Raymond. Everybody else to me is either about the same or taking a step back. Tarasenko came in as a free agent. He hasn't really worked out the greatest production-wise. So, Detroit's got some issues. And to me, is it all on coaching? No. But unfortunately, coaches tend to take the brunt of the blame. And we know that right now, like I said, the Red Wings are not where they want to be. And according to TSN insider Darren Dreger, he feels Lalonde definitely has some pressure on him and could be, like I said, stress could, because Yzerman can be tough to read, the next coaching casualty. You got to wonder about Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. At what point we're going to see something drastic happen in Pitt after all of these disastrous losses? They absolutely stink in Pittsburgh this year. They are going to be one of the worst teams in the NHL. They're probably going to be a top 5 lottery pick by the looks of it. Things have fallen from grace there, and does Sullivan want to continue to work through that? Do the Penguins want to continue to have him work through that? I would think that's another interesting situation to watch there as well. But we have some interesting comments and stuff from Dreger on Lalonde, so I wanted to bring it up here today, but we'll see. Obviously, I think the next probably week to 2 weeks, I wouldn't be shocked if we see another couple of coaching changes, depending on the results and if teams get things turned around or, what have you here in the short term. So we'll see on those fronts. Now, on the trade rumor front, lots of things talking about here today. There was a big update from Dave Pagnotta on the fourthperiod.com going over various scenarios. One that they analyzed closely was the Avalanche goaltending situation. They have a major goaltending situation in Colorado. Lots of outlets have been talking about it here today. The save percentage between Georgiev and Anunin is like dead last in the NHL. They have both had their fair share of mighty struggles this year. And, at one point, it started off bad for Georgiev. It kind of got a little bit better for a little bit under Anunin, but then things kind of fell off the rails. And, they need to score in bunches often to win. And this team won with Darcy Kuemper as a Stanley Cup champion, a few years back. And, no disrespect to Kuemper, but he wasn't an elite level goaltender. They've proven that they don't need that to win. But they need better than, an 871 save percentage. Like, they need closer to the league average. They need to be up around 900 at least to have a chance. So the goaltender that's been kind of referenced here by the insiders here at the fourth period as a prime target for Chris McFarland and the Avalanche and Joe Sakic here is Ducks goalie John Gibson. They said if you look around the league, they talked about maybe Dan Vladar out of Calgary, who I'm not even convinced is available right now. The Flames are doing well. If they fall off the map and things get sideways and they lose track of the playoff spot that they have right now, maybe things change. Wolf is definitely the goalie of the future there. They do have Devin Cooley in their system, who could be an option, but I don't know that they're really out making a deal right now to weaken themselves on their depth. You're looking around other positions. San Jose might be an interesting club. A guy like Mackenzie Blackwood might make sense in Colorado if the Sharks decide to make that move. Clearly, they're not going to be a playoff team. They will play the role of spoiler from time to time this year, and Celebrini looks phenomenal, so they're going to be a fun team to watch, but they're not expected to really make any noise for playoffs, so right now they're well out of it. So a guy like Blackwood could be an option, and to be honest, might even be a better option than Gibson, but apparently, according to the insiders at the fourth period, they're saying that they're at a spot now in Anaheim that they're willing to eat money on John Gibson. He's only got, I think it's 2 years left on his contract, so it's in a much easier tenable situation to make that move. It's probably going to be a case where the return's not even super high, really, to be honest. They'll probably obviously going to need some kind of return. But either way, I mean, integrating a goaltender late in the season at the deadline is really tough. And many are expecting for the Avalanche to address the situation sooner than later, so that whoever they do acquire, whether it's Gibson, Blackwood, or whomever it may be, will have more opportunity and time to kind of get used to their teammates, get used to the way the team plays and the D in front of them, and kind of get integrated so that they have more chance to be successful. So watch the Avalanche and the goaltending for sure. Lots to talk about the New York Islanders, who right now are, at best a mid-team, mediocre at best. Been that way for a while. We know they need change. Lots of fans clamoring for Lou to take a step back and to move on from the GM role and let somebody else run the club. Hard to say if and when that's going to happen. I suspect if we do see change, the earliest it's going to be will be the offseason. I believe that there's a possibility we see that this summer, but it's hard to say, really, to be honest. But there's lots of talk around players like Kyle Palmieri and Brock Nelson, who are both on expiring deals. As all insiders say, it's tough to get any kind of insider track information on the Islanders because of the way Lou runs such a tight ship, and nobody leaks really much of anything out of that organization. But with Nelson and Palmieri, the belief is that neither players had any real dialogue at all around contract extensions. They're both very, good deals for what they bring. They're fair contracts. And so, for a team to take it on with a retention or not, it's not crazy. So I know there's been a lot of talk about maybe Palmieri being a great fit going back to where he started in New Jersey. That might be an option. They certainly looked like they would want to add, most likely throughout the campaign, another top 6, top 9 forward. So he could be a good fit there. He's playing decently for the Islanders. Brock Nelson plays center, got good size, been a proven goal scorer, 30-plus goals multiple times. He was linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know the Leafs want to add a center. That's pretty obvious, but their hole right now in the top 9 is they need another good centerman, and Nelson would be a great fit there. I really think. I know I heard the boys on Overdrive talking and clamoring over Sidney Crosby and Crosby going to Toronto, what that would take, and should Crosby want out of Pittsburgh and all that. And I'm not really sure if I'm going to. I may do a video talking about how their discussion went and what their proposals were, just to get my opinion out there and see what everybody thinks. Although I don't think Crosby is going anywhere, as much as it seems crazy that he should want to. We're not the ones to make up Sid's mind, but there's no reason to think Crosby would want to go to the Leafs. But they definitely need a player, and anybody would be better with Crosby, there's no doubt. And any team would be, if he was available, willing to move, they should be willing to talk and make that happen. But at the end of the day, Brock Nelson is a more reasonable player who could be attained and really could be a good fit there. So again, the Islanders are a team that's expected to be kind of hovering around that wild card spot. Maybe they slip further down in the standings. Hard to say. They had trouble scoring goals. They're not as strong defensively as they used to be. And they definitely need some change. So a couple of veterans there that might be on the move later in the year. And New York Rangers have been an interesting team the last couple of days after Elliot Friedman dropped the bomb on us that Kreider and Trouba's names were out there and that the Rangers are looking to shake things up with a big move. Chris Kreider talked to the media today, talking about all his ailments and how he's had the back issues and all this. It really kind of sounded like he was going out of his way to reduce his value so that he couldn't be traded. That's certainly what it sounded like to me, but regardless of what everybody thinks of that, Kreider and Trouba's names very much out there. Lots of chatter around what could be had. I think a lot of people think that a Trouba trade is more likely than a Kreider trade. I know on looking at like Sarah Valley's and Chris Johnson's trade bait boards that have been out recently, they have Trouba way higher than Kreider. So if we had to pick, I think that would probably be the first order of business for Chris Drury. But again, we don't have a lot of new intel there, just that they're very much in play. Lots of teams are probably looking at it, kicking tires, and we know that really, I just want to talk about Kreider's comments today to kind of, basically say, I don't know, I'm damaged goods, I've got back problems and all this stuff. It's just kind of, I don't know. Felt like he was going out of his way to downgrade himself. Jiricek in Columbus still not traded. We've heard a lot about, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Nashville, all these teams to some degree in the mix. Hard to say exactly, where he goes. There's apparently lots of interest, 5 or 6 solid offers. We've been under the impression for about, I think, 3 days now that a deal is imminent and could happen anytime. Hasn't happened yet. Could happen tonight. Hard to say. But we don't really know anymore there. But we are expecting that to be soon-ish. On Frank Saravalli's trade bait board, he has Jiricek number 1, which was a little bit of a new development. That's really all that's changed today. So it is expected. I could go down here anytime, so stay tuned. I'll break the news when it happens. Lots to talk about Boston. Of course, they had a big loss last night after a couple of wins under new coach Joe Sacco. Obviously couldn't score against the Canucks. Had a 1-0 loss last night. And this is really more of a case of if they don't get the results under the new coach, we know that they're going to make personnel changes. And there's lots of chatter about Brad Marchand, and that was coming from Frank Saravalli. He's not convinced at this point that Marchand's going to be moved anytime soon. Obviously, he has some trade protection in his contract, so he will have some say if it does happen. But we know that contract extension talks were ongoing before, and a deal's never been reached. We don't know if they're going to resume that. I think at this point, I would suspect that from the Bruins standpoint, they probably put a lot of those things on hold so they can kind of reevaluate. And we've seen the Bruins move on from leadership before. Like, look what they did to Zdeno and Chara. I'm not saying that Marchand's in the same kind of boat here, but Chara did go on to play for a couple of years more elsewhere. So, Marchand would be a very interesting name at the trade deadline. This is only have a chance to happen if the Bruins do fall back and they're looking like they're not going to be a playoff team, if they don't rebound to the point that management's content that they can see playoff success. And even then, do they want to move their captain? Do they want to really reset the roster that much? That would really signal a change in direction, you would think. And I don't know that they never seem to be really able to or ready to go that way in Boston. They haven't had to. It's been so long. So that they've been such a strong competitive force in the Atlantic Division. For them to send a signal that we're going to need a significant retool would be a big deal. And I'm not sure it's going to happen, but there's lots of people watching that scenario closely. And Saravalli does feel like if the results don't come, that a Marchand trade is more likely. Montreal, according to between fourthperiod.com and Frank Saravalli, we've heard lots from both of those today. Montreal's taking calls on a ton of players. We've talked about David Savard, the link to the Edmonton Oilers. We've talked about guys like Dvorak and Armia. I'm not sure that either of them have much value. They'd love to move them. I'm not sure that's going to happen. But another name that was brought up today on the fourth period was Jake Evans. Jake Evans is getting a lot of attention as a pretty solid upgrade to a lot of teams' bottom six, making $1.7 million. It's not clear at this point if the Habs are going to look to extend him or consider moving him. And to be honest, I think they're going to probably see what the trade proposals look like and make an evaluation on what's best. But a lot of teams that would be going into the playoffs contending for a cup, he'd be an upgrade on their fourth line in many of those cases. So, again, Evans is a player that's getting lots of attention. No guarantee it happens, but Montreal fielding calls on lots of players. You could throw Mike Matheson in that mix. David Savard's in that mix. Like I said, to some degree, you've got Dvorak, you've got Armia, maybe a Josh Anderson, but I just don't think those forwards really have much value. That's the problem there. They can't even give them away. But their D, especially, and Evans for that matter, do have more value. And I think they're more likely guys that could get moved. But again, it's going to depend on what the organization sees as the best thing. They had a really piss poor effort against Utah last night, only 13 shots. Slafkovsky's not look good. Looks like a lost puppy again, playing fourth line, which is not a good fit for him. They've got some big questions to ask themselves in Montreal, and they need to do some soul searching and some digging here to determine what the course of action is going to be next year. So while we do expect change in Montreal, it's hard to say exactly how deep or what extent it goes. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors discussed in the video down here in the comments below. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.